How you render can make or break your artworks. So today I've come up with a guide to rendering the right way. And there are many methods to rendering and finishing effects, but I'm here to show you the best ones so you can transform your artworks from good to even better. So before you begin rendering, you obviously need to fill in your base colors first. I also like to add some small basic shading to the character at this step as well. And once you've done that and you have everything set up, we can start rendering. So the first thing I do is I set the background color to fit the lighting style I want to achieve for this artwork. So for this one, I changed it to a kind of cool dark grayish color. And for the lighting, if you want it to look dynamic and pleasing to the eye, you should either use a warm shadow and a cool light or a cool shadow and a warm light. For this artwork, I used a cool shadow and a warm light. So what I do is I make a new layer and set its blending mode to overlay. Then I clip it to the character layer and fill in the whole thing. Next, I use an airbrush or a soft brush as my eraser and erase where I want the lighting to be. After that, if you want a lighter atmosphere instead of a darker one, you can make a new layer and set it to add or add glow depending on the software you're using. Then use a soft brush or an airbrush and go over that area that was just erased. And feel free to lower the opacity of that layer as needed, but I recommend not lowering it below 30 or 40%. But as I said before, if you want a darker lighting scenario for your artwork, you should skip this step. And the next step is rim lighting. And what it is that with different objects or parts of the character that are facing each other at some point, the color of one object will show on the face of the other object. It may not make much sense when I say it, but for example, because the character's hair and her clothes are somewhat facing each other here, the color of the clothes will show on a part of her hair. And the rim lighting is usually very faded as well. So then we can add some rim lighting from the background too, and kind of outline the parts of the character facing the background. And it goes everywhere except for where the light is. After that, it's time to add more defined lighting, so make a new layer and set the blending mode to add. Then lower the size on the brush you're using for finer details, and outline every surface that would touch the light we established in the beginning. Next, it's time to give a more finished look by making a brand new layer and, using a white color, outline the outside of the character. Keep in mind the planes and shapes of the individual sections. And once you've done that, it's finally time to add the main shadow. So add a new layer, set the blending mode to multiply, and apply some shadows. At the moment, I don't have a tutorial for how to shade things, so let me know in the comments if you want one. And then for finishing rendering effects, just make a new layer and go over stuff and clean up lines to your heart's content. And I don't really have a set method for this because it's usually the time for you to just turn your brain off and let your artistic side do whatever it wants. Now here are a few tips while you're rendering. Using the lasso tool to select small areas will help you focus on the details and make your art look a lot better. Also, use the curve tool to adjust the colors to your liking, and don't be afraid to mess around with different color schemes. And finally, if you add a very small amount of perspective blur to the artwork, it makes the illustration look much more finished, and it also helps the viewer focus on the parts of the drawing that you want them to be focused on. And if you want to know an alternative method to lighting, just click on the video at the top right of the screen.